Obviously we did all the silver work we said for the gear and for the wheels that we said about before. That's all done. And the other thing we've done is we've painted and done the rear wheel. And also we've done the main gear wheel itself as well. Now there's a bit of a trick to this that people ask me about. Very simple. I like to use the actual tyre black paint, H11, and this is the Guns Sanyo one. It's very, very nice because it's got sort of a very sort of nice flow to it, and it's like a rubbery colour. Now when you look at we've done this one already, it's quite still shiny, but by the time you bung a flat coat over this, it will give it more of a rubbery type look. So there's a quick, easy way to do this. What I tend to do, I've got 2 pots on the go. All right, we're going to put a touch of thinners, just a little bit, into one. Okay, we're going to grab a nice thin brush. We're taking a little bit of paint from down here. We put this up here, you can see what we're doing here. Okay, so we take a bit of black paint into the thinners and give it a wipe around. So we want it to be quite thick to be able to do its job. So there we go. So once we're in, we've done the silver work already. We're just going to come along with our thinned paint and touch. It's a little bit thin. Let's thicken him up a little bit. Okay, we're just going to come along and we just touch the inside and let the capillary action pull it all round the outside, just like so. So we bring this camera in nice and tight. Okay. So we just touch it at various areas as we go round, and the capillary action will pull itself all the way round, and then once you come along you can join it up. Okay, add a little bit more paint. Okay, and then what we do is just let that run all the way around, nice and thin. Okay, then what we're going to do is let that stand for a little bit to totally dry off. Once that's dried off, we can come along with thicker paint and go around and do the other side. So if we just grab a little bit of this, okay, so if we just do the inside of this one, what we're trying to do is going to come along, okay, and the capillary action does all the work. Which gives you a pin sharp edge to your paint work as it goes round, which is very nice and easy to do. So then once you've got your paint on the go round, we can just start from the outside, okay, and we'll work our way inwards, but obviously it will touch the thinned paint and it will continue the capillary action of pulling itself all the way round. So quite a bit of paint, okay, just on the outside like this, and then all we do, we just tap it and fill it up. As we go right the way around the wheel, just like that. So we let it dry off. It's probably easier to do it in stages, although you can do it a little bit like me. Then all we do, normally I do this with a bigger brush for this area, but it'll do just for the minute. Okay, and we just fill in that bit of the tyre, just along. Okay, one wheel done, very nice, and when that dries it'll be absolutely fine. But it's a nice sharp easy way of doing it, and by the time it has a wash and then the wash coat, what will happen with that is that will go over the top and it will make even a sharper line all the way round. So I'll just finish this one off. Okay, so working with clear parts, first thing of all, getting them off of the sprue. Now what you don't want to do is come in where you're far too close, because when you make the cut sometimes you can actually fracture the actual clear part, especially if you're on a tight angle where you're physically pulling the part down in the first place. So what you want to do is cut away from the edge and give yourself a little tab We just bring this top one. So you give yourself a little tab like this, and obviously we've got the other end. We've got one up here as well. Now the thing is with it, if you cut it once you're off of it, you'll be fine. Sometimes they actually stick up from the bottom, which isn't bad. But what you don't want to do is get in there too close, because otherwise you're going to end up pulling it down, fracturing it, and getting that sort of white cracked look actually in your plastic bit. And obviously we don't want something like that. So what you can do is once you've got a little bit sticking off and you've got a nice clear line, you can probably cut it a little bit closer, and make sure you use nice sharp scissors. Now I've got these scissors here. These are decoupage scissors or decoupage scissors. They're actually designed for cutting very thin paper, but it's great because it gives a lovely clean cut. Use them for doing decaling and things like that as well. Now after that, what I've got here is a tri-grit, or you can use a quad grit one. Basically you've just got different things, and they're all quite smooth. None of them are really harsh. We're not going to be coming in here with a bit of 180 grit or something like that. So what we're going to do, we're just going to clean off these little stubs. Now this bottom one here isn't so much a problem because we're just going to follow the curve round. Okay, so what we do, keeping it 90 degrees, we're just going to do and polish it and have a feel. Feels a little bit sharp, obviously got to go bit more. Now what we don't want to do is obviously sand too far down, otherwise we're going to end up with all types of problems. Now the first thing you notice is have a good look at it. Obviously it comes up on the inside, so what we're going to do is just going to pop in here with a knife just like this, okay, and we're just going to trim it up just a little bit. Okay, so again we don't want to have any of this fracturing business, so what we do is just let the blade do the work, cut down. And then from the back, all we're doing is really just chiseling it out. And then hopefully, should be able to slip a blade behind here and just eke it out just a little bit. Something like that. Okay, and then just literally just chip a little bit off. You don't want to be in there hacking in here, otherwise we'll take it all off too far. Then in again, bit of a sand up. Same with this little top one, tiny little peg here at the top. So we can just nip that out, okay, making sure it's all nice and clean. And then test fitting is somewhat of a must, so you want to come along, pop it in and see how it sits in. And you might be able to see on the close-up we've got quite a nasty gap going down the bottom one where it hasn't fitted in at all nicely on the top one. So we give it a bit of a push, and we're really looking for the reasons why, and there is a little bit at the top here. So what you could do is say, right, okay, I've got side parts that are going to hold it on, take off the entire one. Okay, so we just snip that out, cutting it out with the knife. Okay, then we're obviously going to sand it flush. Okay, now normally you won't have to do this. This is quite the extreme effect to it, but it does work. Okay, then again we're just going to come in and see how it looks. Pop it in. No, see, we're still not happy. It's not flat. Feel it, see how it feels. I can feel quite a large lump. So we're just going to come in. But I wouldn't come in with something like a heavy grit sandpaper, because if you take too much off, then we're in a world of pain, because obviously we're going to have to try and fill it back in. Now that's not looking too bad at all. I think with a little bit of PE glue, which is what we'll use to seal it in place, we'll actually end up with quite a nice fit. So we're quite happy how that's going to go in there now. Okay, other things you can come across, like we've got here, clear these out. We've got here a situation where we've got multiple barring and things like that. We've got tabs on, so what we're going to do is just snip these off. Again, we're nice and close in. This one is one of those funny ones, so we're just going to cut across. Okay, snip them out just a little bit. Okay, got quite thick, so we've got an old worn out file. So we're just going to give this a rub, coming across both, and a bit like when we do our normal sanding. So we have a feel, looks good. Okay, we've got one at the front here as well, which is a particularly awkward one to get to because it's in. So we're going to try this with a knife there again, being very careful. just very gently working that blade across, because we don't want to end up, as I said, fracturing things. So sanding stick out again. This is a nice fine one. Again, test fitting. So we're going to come along here on the top of our Mosquito here, alright, and we're going to pop this on and we're going to see how it all sits and lines up. And we're looking for any real noticeable areas where it's not looking right. So that one doesn't look too bad at all. We're quite happy how that is. So what we've got on this one are these side windows. Quite common for bomber kits and things like that to have these side windows in. So again, cutting off these little tabs. Now you could just come along and replace it with a vac form one, and there's plenty of manufacturers out there who will quite happily sell you a vac form one. Pros and cons: vac form, obviously very, very thin, gives a lot more translucent look to it, a lot clearer in layman's terms. Okay, this is plastic, so obviously you've got the bend of it. Quite frankly, vac form ones very, very nice, but it tends to be more work than I'd like to do. When I'm working with these, I quite fancy just dropping them in and away we go. So we've got that one, and we just take out this inner one. Okay, same with the other side. Okay. Now, obviously glues, for when you're doing clear parts, what type of glue you're going to use is quite important. If you're going to use a super glue or a CA glue, trouble with that is it lends to fogging up. Other little things you can do is to use things like PVA glue. So you might have like something like a normal sort of craft glue, PVA white glue, kids glue, okay? Somewhere in between the two is the glue which actually I quite like to use, is Gator glue. Now I've had this quite a while now. Nice thing with Gator glue, it dries totally clear, and it's got quite a lot of tackiness to it. Now this isn't going to be, you know, welded in, you're still going to have to use it, but once it goes off completely clear. Now there is other things you can use. I know obviously you've got crystal glues and things like that. The thing I like about this, if you make a mistake and it goes wrong, or you need to get in at a later date, you can cut this stuff, clean it up, reapply it, no problem at all. Okay, so we've got these side ones to go on. So there again, we're just going to test, see how it goes. Okay, so we're just going to line it all up. Obviously it's going to be quite hard for you to see on camera, but you've got a couple of locating pins, a couple of business bits around, so it's going to go something in like this. Okay, so I'm quite happy how that one's going to go. So what we're going to do, we're going to use a cocktail stick, just in like this. We grab a little bit of the glue on the end. Alright, then all we're going to do is just drop, touch a bit around. Now if you've got too much on here, don't panic, because this will easily clean up afterwards. Okay, give it a couple of moments to start to go off, because it will become far more tacky, and that's what we want. Okay, so when it starts to go clear, we can then just come along, okay, and we can slide this in. So we just need to check the underside, making sure it's all sitting nicely. Let's say with clear parts, it is always the problem to know that you're actually in and sitting. Okay, we're making a bit of a mess of this now. Okay, that's in how we want it. So what we do, we take a cotton bud, okay, wet it. In my case, I'll just lick it, okay, and rub off the excess glue from around it. Now be careful, because obviously this will fall off, given any chance at all. But what you actually do, it will dry nice and clear. Okay, now it's best to leave that to dry off on its own, okay, because obviously you start to handle it, you're going to knock it out, and there you go. So give it an hour to go off, then we can come back, do the other side, okay, and bits and pieces like that, and then we can go around trying to mask it up with all this framework. Okay, so as you can probably see here on the close-up, this is the one we just glued. Nice crystal clear, a couple of hours drying, quite hard as well, no problem with that. So now we can get on with masking it. Now there's two ways of masking it. You can either do, as I'm going to show you, plate it over and then trim around the outside and take off, and that's my preferred way of doing it. Or the other way is you can buy pre-done mask sets. Now Edard do these and they're all done, so it tells you where they go and just simply lay them on, put them on top. Very straightforward, easy to do. The other way of doing it on complex stuff like I've done on this one, what we've actually done here is go round and just use very, very thin tape. So here we've got here a little bit of 1mm tape. Jammy dog stuff, this goes all the way around, and because it's so thin it bends around corners and things like that. And then what you can do, you probably see a little tint on it. All this is mask oil. He's here looking for his little pot of it now. There we go. This is some old mask oil we've got, which is the Humbrol stuff, but obviously there is other manufacturers out there you can use, and that goes around just to fill in all the gaps, but it's quite handy for doing on complex curves and things like that. So on this one, what we're going to use is a little bit of 6mm, because it's pretty much that way. What you want to do is look around for areas where perhaps the bars aren't particularly showing well, or good areas to go through. So what we mean by, like on this one here, we're going to run the tape right down this centre one. So obviously it goes all the way down here, all the way across, and make the crimp areas like this in the middle of the glass so it won't affect. So what we do, we just come in round, just have a little crimp area in there. Then what you do, if you put a light behind it, you will see the outline of all the panel lines running through. So I can see a couple of these here immediately. So what we're going to do is just come along, nice sharp blade, okay, and then working from one side to the other, just drag it very slowly across. Don't do it quick, otherwise you end up going all over the place. Okay, and then we'll just do this one here. But if you keep your blade quite level, if you're going from a top and you sort of cut across quite high and go across, you tend to drag it. If it's nice and low, it's a nice proper cut. So what we do, we just do these here as well. And obviously if you've got your blade laying flat like this, you can roughly work out where you're going, even if you can't see the panel line, because your blade carries on. And then when you're doing them on tighter areas, just keep it going nice and slow, like that. So we just do this one here. Right the way across. So then when you lift these off, make sure you cut the corners, as I haven't done on that one. That way you get a nice clean cut. There we go. And then hopefully it'll be the same on this one as well. And there we have it. We've got the beginnings of it here. Then obviously we've got this one that runs around the back here. Obviously this will be a two-stage cut anyway. But it's going to run around. But by working your way around, put it on here, okay, then you can work on to the next one. Now another way of doing it, if you wanted to, and you didn't want to mask all this up in one, you can come along, and it's an old complex way I used to do it, but it's easier if you've got complex curves and you're not very good trimming. What you can actually do is just come along like we did here, put two down each side, spray that, let it dry, peel it off, do the next one going across, spray it off, and there. So you don't have to trim it up, so you just put in every individual bar just by hand. Now if you're using your paint quite dry, you can do it and build it up quite quickly, but I prefer to do it in one. We're not going to attach this onto the actual model itself once we've done it all, because what we need to do is get in there and get rid of any dust, and it's quite a nice fit on there, so it should fit in there quite nicely. So what I'm going to do is just carry on putting all these little bars in. Okay, so a bit of time later, there we go, that's that canopy all done. Now the reason it looks a bit mess because I've just folded them over underneath to put them in. So just be careful when you're doing these side windows that you don't push them in again, because obviously it's not as hard as perhaps if you're going to be using some other types of glue. So another little thing we've done, another little trick, okay, you probably see down here on the front of this one here, we've done black on the inside. Now the reason for that is, if you just put clear up against it, if you can see through the clear, you're going to see plastic, and that is not a good look that you're going to want. So that's why we do that one. So what we want to do now is spray it up. So if we just get this old bit down here, what we're going to do is just going to spray the outside green. Now the reason for doing this is so it actually shows through. So we're going to do this 3 layers so you get a nice strong metal looking part to it. So obviously from the inside it's going to look like it's green. Okay, so when you're looking from the inside out or looking through, it's going to look green, it's going to look a metal colour. Then we're going to put a black on top of it. That will give it a nice thick depth so you get no opaqueness and no sort of see-through green, and then it will have the blue obviously on top of that. So we're going to shoot this neat straight in. So we just want to give this a little bit of a mix because it's gone a little bit thin. So we just give this a bit of a mix, but as I say, this is neat. It's just because I'm getting near the end of the bottle in here. Okay, so what we do, we just pick that out, let it sit just for a sec, and then slowly pour it in. Don't chuck it in, otherwise you're going to end up with all the gooey bits, and that is not what we want, because obviously we'll block our airbrush. Check our flow. It's a bit speckly, but to be honest, that's to be expected. And then obviously we don't want to spray the inside. So what we're going to do, we're just going to grab a cocktail stick, just like this, a bit of white tack. This is the oil-free stuff. Okay, push down. And what we're going to do is shoot downwards and to the side, but certainly not from the underside. We can obviously clean it out afterwards, but it's something we don't really want to do. So what we're going to do, shoot the green on. Something like that. I've just got to add, I've just missed a bit, I've just noticed. We need 2 tiny bits. Just down here, we've got a little bit of overspray, but we can clean that up afterwards. Okay, do this one and this side, because we forgot those. Which is totally my fault. I'm getting carried away and moving a little bit too quick. So, there we go, just carry on with those. Okay, so from the inside you can probably see it's looking green, which is what we're after, okay? So we'll make sure we're everywhere. Now the chances are we might be alright with keeping it, but I don't want to take the risk, so we're just going to come along and we're just going to do this one here. Run out of green there. A touch more, only going to need a drop. Just to do this one. Should have thought about these and had these ready earlier, really. There we go. Okay, in with this one. On with that green, so it will show through just the same. Blowing through all of that. Touch of airbrush cleaner, just be a quick change. Okay, just not like that. I'll blow that out. Take that out. Clean round, just like so. Okay, coming in with a tiny bit of black. And then we're just going to put the black over the top. Exactly the same thing, just to give us a bit of depth. And we'll clean up all these parts afterwards. There we go, so that's those, and what we do is stick them out the way, keep them nice and safe, let them dry off, and as I said, we're not going to install those. Quick clean. We're not going to install those just yet, we're going to let them sit just for a moment, dry off, and then obviously what will happen is before we do the sort of final assembly of all the bits and pieces, we can actually add them on. But what I don't want to do is put them on now, otherwise what's going to happen is if we do get any dust or smears or anything on the inside, we're not going to be able to clean it out.